People in a fandom don't always see eye to eye on everything. I know, shocking, right? When a video game franchise tries out a new spin-off idea, or taps into a different genre or new graphical style, or even undergoes some new creative decisions, it leads to discourse over which style is better or whether the new stuff was a good idea in the first place. Sometimes these disagreements can spiral into a full-on war of opinion, especially with how the internet loves itself some hyperbole. And at its worst, the existence of such a divide can even become what a series is most known for. The Smash Bros. Community has been no exception to this, as anyone who's been part of it for long enough can attest. There are disagreements constantly. Which games are best to play or watch? Which characters in a given entry are better or worse? Which are more hyped than others, or low-tier trash, or broken and unfair? It even creeps into newcomer speculation, with arguments left and right over who could, or should, join the fight next. It's a realm overrun by first impressions, hot takes, and people sticking to what they already know. Anything or anyone who isn't deemed acceptable gets met with hostility and aggression, and different factions have very different stances on who they'd accept. Finding a way to satisfy such a divided fanbase is exceedingly difficult. No wonder Sakurai and Nintendo seem to be focusing on using unique mechanics and ideas to appeal to the players more than the speculators. And today, we're looking at someone whose own home series has seen his own fandom split in two. This is Challenger Approaching, where we take a character who isn't playable in Smash yet and go into great detail on what they could be like if they got in for real. Appealing to this challenger's entire fractured fanbase at once may be a fool's errand, but if crafted just right, a Smash appearance could simultaneously give all of his fans something to hype over and make for a very interesting new fighter in his own right. Paper Mario! Paper Mario is exactly what his name suggests, an alternate version of Mario from a world of two-dimensional paper beings. But there's much more to him and his series than that. What began as an attempt near the turn of the century to make a sequel to Super Mario RPG grew into something else entirely. The Nintendo 64's limitations drove the development team to create a unique art style featuring flat 2D characters in 3D environments reminiscent of pop-up books. Releasing in 2001 near the end of the system's lifespan, Paper Mario was one of the N64's last hurrahs, and while it was no longer Super Mario RPG 2, it did cement itself as a spiritual successor, and was successful enough at that to net a critically acclaimed sequel that expanded on the formula and then some. Even when things took a turn for the experimental when the third Paper Mario title changed from RPG with platformer elements to platformer with RPG elements, the spin-off series had established itself as Nintendo's way of experimenting with the Mario IP. They could craft strange and unusual settings, introduce characters with very different designs and personalities than those in the mainline games, and delve into deeper, darker, and more nuanced themes than you'd expect from such a whimsical franchise. And things kept changing as Paper Mario continued to experiment, shifting to two games that blended platforming elements and deck builder style combat, a crossover with the other Super Mario RPG spiritual successor, and most recently, a hybrid of the old formula with interconnected worlds and a unique ring-based battle system that emphasizes puzzle solving. This is one series that does not like to sit still. And that's the thing. This constant change has led to a fandom comprised of a lot of smaller fandoms, with a major ideological split between fans of the first three games and those that came afterward. These two factions rarely see eye to eye. Fans of the older entries argue that Paper Mario has changed too much and lost the identity and formula that made it enjoyable. Fans of the newer games argue that they don't have to be exactly like the older ones to be good games. It doesn't help that extenuating circumstances widened this split even further from the start. A push to standardize things across the Mario franchise for the first half of the 2010s left the start of Paper Mario's modern era unable to tap into the character variety it once had. The suddenly generic NPC designs became a particular sour spot for older fans, many of whom accused the devs of phoning it in. Even after we found out recently that the culprit was forces higher up in Nintendo's chain of command who actively prevented Paper Mario's developers from using more divergent designs. And when the company behind the Mario and Luigi series abruptly closed down in late 2019, some of the fans who enjoyed Mario's role-playing spin-offs began to resent Paper Mario even further for going off and doing its own thing. What started as a difference in opinion among the fandom grew into a full-on rift, as many older fans started blaming the newer games for taking away something they enjoyed so much. Needless to say, mending something this divided would not be an easy feat. Which is why I'm about to do something very stupid and attempt exactly that. Thing is, if Paper Mario did get a chance to be playable in Smash, all of these games would have something to contribute. I've seen so many other concepts for this character basically pick a side over which version of Paper Mario quote deserves to be represented more. But he's done so much across the years and gained such impressive moveset potential that, I figure, why let such a thing be limited by a fandom feud? Smash Bros. Celebrates Nintendo's past and present alike. Locking out an entire side of a character's history for the sake of making a statement would be petty and vindictive. And I say that as someone who considers The Thousand Year Door to be one of my favorite RPGs ever. I want to pull from all of this character's complicated and contentious history and create a concept that both old and new fans can enjoy while also being a fresh and unique fighter in his own right. It's a task I'm willing to try, even if it may be a fool's errand. Alright, what if this all did happen? What would Paper Mario be like in Smash? His default appearance has only changed a little over time, but it's led to two distinct art styles. I think his main look would be the modern version with the solid white outline. Characters in Smash with multiple designs usually pull from their most recent appearance as their default. That said, I could see his older design without the white outline showing up for half his alternate colors. There are people who prefer that art style, so why not? For animations though, we'd have to pick one or the other. Paper Mario's had two distinct styles of movement across his games. The smooth-looking ones used in The Thousand Year Door and Super, and the limited animation used in 64 and every game after Super as a stylistic choice. We kinda can't use both without risking a style clash, and I figure he'd have the latter in Smash since that's what his recent outings have used. It would help him feel more distinct in battle, as long as they make sure it's different enough next to Mr. Game & Watch. Paper Mario actually has a lot to pick from for alternate colors. We could start with most of regular Mario's alts, swapping out the Builder and Groom outfits for the two from Smash 4 they replaced. Paper Mario has actually used several of these before, like donning a fire suit when he uses fire flowers in Origami King, and getting the Luigi, Wario, and Waluigi themed outfits by equipping certain badges in The Thousand Year Door. Then we could take any spots left open and plug in alts based on some of his allies or antagonists from across the series, choosing palettes that are visually distinct from the ones we already have. Though I could see them pulling one from Origami King no matter what, whether Olivia or King Ollie or someone else. Paper Mario titles have always had abstract visual styles, from the pop-up aesthetics of the first two games, to the papercraft worlds of the modern era, to the very experimental designs in Super. For a Smash rendition, we want to work in some of that creativity through little visual effects when he moves and animates. Stuff like having the motion lines on his attacks resemble little paper streamers, or having miniature paper stars pop up when he collides with a stage or platform. And we want to give special attention to his trusty hammer, a series mainstay and a big reason why he stands out compared to the regular Mario. It's gone from flat 2D like Paper Mario himself to a more 3D cardboard design in Color Splash and Origami King. And I think the 3D look would work best in Smash too. Not only is it visually striking when swung by a 2D character, it helps emphasize how strong his hammer techniques can get. So that's what he could look like, but what about the details? Let's see what Paper Mario's fighting style, stats, and other attributes might stack up to. Mario's always been a jack of all trades no matter what form he takes, doing just about everything pretty well even if he's not as strong in them as more specialized characters. And Paper Mario's games have always been a quirkier take on Mario, right? So, how about a playstyle that reflects that? Like his Flesh and Blood counterpart, Paper Mario would have a well-rounded moveset that can do a lot of different things, very adaptable and flexible and hard to outright counter. But where regular Mario wants to run in and overwhelm his opponents with rapid-fire attacks, Paper Mario would be more about using creative mix-ups to keep his enemies on their toes. His frame data wouldn't let him just run in and press buttons, but when he successfully catches his opponents by surprise, he gets rewarded much more in return. It's kinda like how Lucas plays. Well, offline Lucas. Delving into the raw numbers, size-wise, Paper Mario sits at more or less the same height as normal Mario. Below average and compact, it'd make him deceptively difficult to hit safely when his attacks are going, which is good, since he cannot take very many hits. While he's heavier than Smash's other two-dimensional being, a weight value of 78 would tie him with Sheik for 5th lightest in the current version of the game. It's a far cry from regular Mario's 98, and it means Paper Mario's players would need to be careful not to screw up too often because he can't afford to nearly as much. He's also a little slower than regular Mario, with a below-average run alongside airspeed that, while still pretty good, isn't top 12 in the game like his counterparts. Like I said, he's built around offensive mix-ups, not rushing people down blindly. However, he does walk pretty fast, using the default animation from his games, which can help him make quick adjustments when spacing or make it easier to approach projectile-heavy opponents. If you're wondering, I'd make his run animation something original that looks like he's sprinting. His fall speed is pretty floaty, as you'd expect from a being of living paper. While not as slow to fall as Kirby or Mr. Game & Watch, he still falls slower than 3/4 of the cast. There are upsides and downsides to this. But he makes up for his weaker mobility and low weight compared to normal Mario with better damage output. Combining a nearly as good combo game with superior damage per hit, he get more out of each conversion, racking up damage frighteningly well when he has momentum. He doesn't have much trouble closing out stocks either. This is why keeping his opponents guessing is so rewarding for him. When he does get the upper hand, he can really lay the smackdown both when he gets in and if he keeps his advantage state going. He even has a way to raise his damage even higher. More on that later on. Alright, with his base traits established, let's start crafting Paper Mario's moveset and put his potential on full display. Starting with his basic grounded attacks, Paper Mario's jab combo consists of 2 punches and a kick. It's basically a paperized version of regular Mario's, though still not a complete copy due to the different style of animation. It's also slower to come out at around frame 4, but the full combo does more damage. And that's where the similarities stop. Paper Mario's toolset is so different that the entire rest of his moveset will be unique. And his forward tilt is an easy one, a simple swing of his hammer. A staple move across the entire series, it'd be a focal point of his moveset in Smash as well. A highly effective footsies tool with some disjoint on it, it'd even become a reliable kill move at higher percents. His up tilt has him don a spiked helmet from Sticker Star and Color Splash and hop upward slightly. It's a decently quick anti-air with some combo potential that even turns his head intangible temporarily, calling back to it being a counterattack move in its original games by letting him directly contest aerial approaches with it, though it doesn't have much lateral reach, so make sure your target's right on top of you or you'll just miss. Paper Mario's down tilt has him whip out a paper tanuki tail and swing it at ground level to catch opponents off guard. A disjointed poke that doubles as a combo starter at low percents is based specifically on the Origami King version of the move, where it's an AoE attack and not another counter. And his dash attack pulls from his very first outing with the spin dash maneuver that only appeared in that game for whatever reason. It's a solid burst option that does typical dash attack stuff. Doesn't combo into anything or end stocks, but it lets you punish or catch landings from a distance. And the forward knockback is good for sending opponents off stage. Despite the whirlwind motion, it'd deal a single hit, not multiple. Alright, now for the fun stuff. Paper Mario's forward smash uses the recurring power smash technique. A slower but powerful hammer strike that merges the animation from the Thousand-Year Door with the visuals of a perfectly executed hammer attack in Origami King, paper shockwave and all. Able to end stocks early with good positioning, it's also got so much startup that it's basically reserved for hard reads, or cheesing people with it online. Banjo's forward smash is a good comparison. Paper Mario's up smash pulls from something a little different, a defensive technique from the Thousand-Year Door. After focusing for a brief moment, he springs upward with a spiral uppercut that reaches short hop height. The original Super Guard was an advanced defensive ability that let you block all incoming damage and even hurt the enemy back if they attacked you physically, but with added risk since the timing was much stricter than the regular defend command. Our version makes Paper Mario completely invincible for a few frames during the uppercut, protecting him from enemy aggression just like its original rendition. But make sure you predict when to use it and time it right, because it has so much end lag that you'd be a sitting duck if you missed. Borrowing another hammer technique from the first 2 games, Paper Mario's down smash has him wind up and perform a spin attack that hits both sides twice. His fastest smash attack, though still below average startup overall, the first set of hits would actually be particularly strong and great at killing off the side, though the nature of the move would make it easy to punish if it doesn't connect. Each hit knocks people away independently instead of chaining together. If you thought those were creative, wait until you see Paper Mario's aerials. His neutral air has him perform a 360-degree front flip with his hammer that clears enemies out around him. It's based on the animation he does in the newer games when you do a perfect hammer command before the actual attack comes out. Dealing a single hit with diagonal knockback, it has solid range for a non-sword neutral air, and landing with it can even start combos in lower percents. The downside? Its startup isn't the greatest. Paper Mario's forward air is another hammer attack, this time a more standard one where he swings it forward with a slight diagonal lean to it. More for offensive purposes than his neutral air is, it boasts worse coverage, but greater range, damage, actual legitimate kill potential, and overall leaves opponents saying, "Ow, don't hit me!" Alright, here's a weird one. For his back air, Paper Mario whips out a papier-mâché POW block and activates it, generating a small circular shockwave around it that spikes anyone caught in its center sweet spot. POW blocks are recurring items in the series, getting more use than they do in the main Mario games, and having a back air that spikes is pretty unusual. It does have a bigger sour spot that acts more like a normal aerial, but this move is such a commitment that it's not built for spacing width anyway. Paper Mario's up air brings out the hammer again, twirling it quickly above his head. A very effective combo tool, not unlike regular Mario's up air, though with a different hitbox and a little more knockback on it. It's also different enough from DDD's up air despite being a similar technique, with a quicker animation that deals a single hit with less range and kill power but better combo ability. Fans of the first 3 Paper Mario games probably saw this down air coming. A recurring technique, it's exactly what it looks like. A stall and fall move that clears away anyone below you on the way down, but leaves you wide open afterward. Dealing moderate knockback, but lacking the ability to spike, it's a movement mix-up that helps you escape a bad situation if your opponent leaves themselves open. Maybe it could even have a secondary landing hitbox in the form of another Paper Shockwave. Paper Mario's grab game continues the creativity, though we are starting with a regular set of grabs. He could have a disjointed grab based on the pixel that lets him pick enemies up in Super, but ultimately I think a standard grab works better with the fighting style we want him to have here. Difficult creative decisions are difficult. But we're back on track with this pummel. Based on an attack from Sticker Star and Color Splash, it's a weak yet rapid-fire hammer strike with his free hand. Could even change the hammer's design during it to base it on the toy hammer from the original sticker and card. Then his forward throw has Paper Mario lob his opponent ahead, take out a fire flower, and toss a fireball right at them. A 2-hit throw similar to Falco's, it's mostly just for damage and positioning despite the cool animation. Paper Mario's back throw pulls from another recurring ability, this one combining the Fire Drive badge from the Thousand Year Door with the Fire Hammer from the modern games for a sideways swing that lights your opponent ablaze and sends them flying. This one doubles as Paper Mario's kill throw, with above average power at closing stocks out near the ledge. His up throw repurposes a central mechanic from Origami King by flinging the enemy skyward and some confetti with them. The simplest of Mario's throws, it's a combo starter up through mid-percents. The pieces of confetti don't actually do anything, they're just there for aesthetic purposes. Then his down throw reimagines the power bounce badge by having him shove his opponent to the ground and jump on them 3 times in rapid succession. This one deals the most damage of his throws, sending the victim forward afterward. Deals weaker knockback than his forward throw, but at a lower angle. But that's not the only jump technique he has. I could also see Paper Mario getting a unique mechanic that gives his footstool jumps extra utility. Where other characters just push the opponent downward, Paper Mario's would deal actual damage and knockback. It'd make his footstool jump an actual combo tool at low percents to reflect how essential his jump attacks are in his games. And the knockback would be a low enough angle at higher percents to edgeguard characters with poor recoveries. Maybe he'd even have a bigger activation range for his footstools than other characters, only if it wasn't too overpowered. Finally, some odds and ends, like his spot dodge having him turn paper thin like the ability from the Thousand Year Door, or using the paper tube form from the same game as his roll animation. And his taunts could be one where he strikes a triumphant pose that shows up a lot in the first 3 games, one where he appeals to an unseen crowd, and a special one where he stops to ponder for a moment and either Goombario, Goombella, Tippy, Kirsty, Huey, or Olivia comes out for a moment to help him think before returning to his pocket. Just 1 act left in our paper performance. Let's see what Paper Mario Specials could do to elevate his performance to a work of art. And beginning at neutral, it's a series staple. A recurring skill that appears in almost every Paper Mario title, the ability to throw your hammer to strike enemies regardless of their location is always useful to have. Simply pressing B has Paper Mario rear back and fling his hammer a short distance forward, dealing moderate damage and knockback. But wait, you could hold B instead to charge the toss and give it greater distance and power. You could also press a direction on the control stick to influence the angle the hammer gets thrown at, which I suppose makes it comparable to the Belmont's axes, offering less raw power but faster movement and much more control over its trajectory. Maybe there could even be a stylistic targeting reticle that shows approximately the strength and angle the hammer will fly at for the first few feet. Despite being a projectile, Hurl Hammer isn't really built for zoning. Too telegraphed and too much end lag for that, especially since you can't move while prepping the hammer and can't store the charge for later. Instead, it has 2 other roles. One as long-range pressure against campy opponents. Get onto a platform or out of their zone of control and aim from a position they can't hit you at to encourage them to knock it off and approach. Its other use is harassing someone in a disadvantaged state whose options to avoid it are currently limited, especially since its knockback is at a lower angle than the Belmont's axes, making it an actually pretty good edge-guarding tool if you predict where your opponent will go. Or you can throw it at an angle you don't want them to recover from and force them to come back from a different direction. Oh, and if the devs wanted to, they could change the hammer's appearance to resemble the metallic design from the weapon icon. Paper Mario's side special is another projectile. But once again, it's another unusual one. Kicking Koopa shells as a method of attack is another thing that keeps showing up, whether with help from party members in the first 2 games, via summons in Sticker Star and Color Splash, or just in Mario games in general, though this version pulls more from its use in the overworld than the first 2. On use, Paper Mario takes out a paper shell, usually it's a plain green one, but sometimes it'd be dark blue with a bandana, or darker green, as a neat reference. After a short delay, Paper Mario drops the shell and kicks it forward at ground level, or foot level if he's in the air, with it maintaining its current height, damaging anyone in its path as it goes, and destroying any projectiles on contact that aren't significantly stronger than it. After reaching about a platform and a half's distance, the shell stops and boomerangs back to its original position, dealing a second hit to anyone caught in the way. You can move again shortly after the shell starts its return. If you're not there when it comes back, or you used it in midair and you fell while it didn't, it goes a short distance beyond before disappearing. Just like with Hurl Hammer, shell toss isn't much of a zoning tool. Too telegraphed, too minor a knockback, too much end lag to combo off the hits, and you're wide open to aerial approaches during it. Instead, it works best for soft reading grounded attacks or ground level projectiles, outspacing them and punishing your opponent for being too predictable so you can gain the advantage and get to work. Also lets you trap landings on stages lacking in platforms, throw it out off stage to intercept opponents trying to come back, or even pressure the ledge to tack on some extra damage and keep them from resetting to neutral so easily. For Paper Mario's Up Special, we're going from multi-game references to something from a specific one, though you might have seen it coming anyway. One of the quote-quote curses you get in the Thousand-Year Door lets Mario turn into a paper airplane when standing on certain platforms, allowing him to cross long distances he couldn't have otherwise. Pretty useful curse. And Smash can make it even better. Here, Paper Mario could use it without needing the special pad, morphing into plane mode in midair and sailing straight ahead diagonally, at first. You see, just like you can alter your flight path in the Thousand-Year Door, you'd be able to hold up or down to influence the direction you fly in, allowing you to mix up your recovery angles and adjust your movement on the fly to avoid incoming opponents or projectiles. There'd even be a hitbox on the tip of the plane for protection. A weak one, but still enough to knock away anyone who tries to attack you head on. However, the more you adjust your recovery angle, the faster you'd run out of momentum. And once you've run out, Paper Mario transforms back and goes into freefall helplessly, meaning you can't get too crazy or you might run out of steam before you make it to safety. Basically, think of it like a more balanced, less overtly broken version of Brawl's gliding mechanics. The paper plane is a flexible move that lets you recover from many different directions and alter your approach mid-flight. Its non-linearity works wonders against opponents with strong edge guards, which is good because Paper Mario is super light and kinda needs the extra help. But it's not foolproof. The further out you have to use it from, the less you can safely adjust your flight path without risking falling short of the ledge. And since the front hitbox is small, it won't protect you much against swords or other disjoints. Alright, I bet you'll never see this down special coming. Got any ideas? Anything that comes to mind? Didn't expect something from the crossover, did ya? One of Paper Mario's combat abilities in Mario & Luigi Paper Jam that lets him summon copies of himself to stack up with and enhance his attacks as long as the copies stay intact. This is where that boosted damage output comes into play. Activating the move makes the eponymous block appear above Paper Mario's head, and he jumps up and punches it to generate a doppelganger that stacks up with him, granting a very slight damage buff to all of his attacks. What's so special about that? Well, after about 10 seconds or so of cooldown, you can summon the block again for another copy that stacks your damage up even further. You can have up to 4 duplicates at a time for a full stack of 5 Marios that grants a total buff of 1.25 times your normal damage, raising Paper Mario's damage output to rival some of the best in the game. So, what's the catch? Well, just like in Paper Jam, the copies can only take so much punishment. For every, say, 25 to 30 damage or so you take, 1 copy is destroyed, and you lose all of them anytime you lose a stock. Meaning in order to make the most of these buffs, you need to play carefully and get hit as little as possible. The copy block and the clones it creates offer a small but stackable boost to your damage that can turn the tides of battle by making every hit you land count that much more. The more copies you stack and the longer you keep them for, the more capable you become of building momentum that can become insurmountable. However, getting hit too much makes you lose the copies as soon as you get them. Unlike in Paper Jam, they don't protect you from attacks whatsoever, and they don't buff your frame data or knockback at all. It's just a damage multiplier. And the animation of generating the block and hitting it is pretty lengthy, and if you get hit before it's done, no copy for you. You'd need to plan accordingly. Oh, and the copies would have just a little delay in their animations, making it easier for you and your opponents to tell how many you currently have stacked up. All that's left now is Paper Mario's final smash. And I admit, I haven't tapped into the series' memorable cast of partner characters and NPCs as much as I could. I wanted to focus this moveset more on Paper Mario himself. But now, it's their time to shine. Empowered by the energy of a Smash Ball, Paper Mario summons the 1,000-fold arms from his most recent outing and pounds the ground in front of him. Any opponents struck by them are whisked away into a cinematic that places them on a strange papercraft stage in front of a raucous, cheering audience. The camera pans over to the stage's left side to show Paper Mario waiting for them, and he beckons the audience to join him on stage as a full crowd's worth of allies and major characters from his series' entire history take the stage alongside him and join together into a colossal tower of paper power. Then this formation of partners, caretakers, messengers, reluctantly allied minions, hooded fortune tellers, denizens of Rogueport and Flipside, and a rainbow's worth of multicolored toads all leap forward at once and dogpile the helpless fighters for a showstopper of a finishing blow. And that's what Paper Mario could be capable of in Smash. A strange facsimile of Mario from a parallel world of paper that, over time, has gained an identity all its own just like his world has. With a wide array of abilities at his fingertips, he embodies a quirky yet surprisingly meaningful alternate take on a familiar face, while diverging enough in his abilities to be a very unique fighter. Paper Mario's greatest asset is a well-rounded and diverse moveset. Having such a wide repertoire of tools makes him adept at adapting how he fights and difficult to shut down outright. His abilities both encourage and strongly reward mixing up his tactics and taking his opponents by surprise, allowing him to wipe the floor with them if their defensive habits get predictable. And his ability to stack copies and raise his damage output even further allows him to mount comebacks or steamroll opponents if he gets momentum going. However, he's not the greatest at winning straight fights, especially against opponents who outrange him, which can lead to him crumpling if his players' mind games aren't on point, especially when he's in a disadvantaged state and the pressure's on, since he's also reliant on mix-ups and keeping opponents guessing there to have any hope of escaping bad situations. And his very light weight means he can't afford to make many mistakes, as taking too much punishment can lead to him losing stock shockingly early and forcing him to play from behind. Whew, deceptively complicated, huh? Revisiting this character was something else. Not sure how many of you saw my original concept from years ago, but I haven't been very satisfied with it lately, and this was a chance to give it another go now that Paper Mario is relevant again. I realize limiting partner characters to mostly just the final smash probably feels like sacrilege to some fans, but I wanted to keep the moveset clean and coherent. I've seen too many concepts for this character come off like they cared more about making references to the first two games than creating something that felt like it could truly exist in Smash. But there's more to designing these movesets than that, you know? Though I did consider a bomb technique for his down special, but I decided it had been one projectile too many. Wanted to keep his moveset from getting too defensive and campy, because that playstyle wasn't what I had in mind. Paper Mario's been through a lot of ups and downs, but hopefully my take on him here managed to reconcile the two halves of his fandom in some way, shape, or form. While I really enjoyed his earlier outings when I was younger, like I said, the Thousand Year Door is still one of my favorites, I think the newer style has its merits too. Origami King even taps into the same creativity and stellar writing that originally made the series so special, even despite the design limitations forced onto the developers. And there are even some surprisingly heartfelt moments along the way, just like in the older games. So, while I do hope we get another true successor to Super Mario RPG eventually, I also don't mind Paper Mario being more experimental nowadays, and I really enjoyed the quirky adventure/platformer/puzzle hybrid that we got. So, if you're on the fence, look up some gameplay and see if it piques your interest. Special thanks to these people for helping make this video happen, especially to my patrons for their continued support in such difficult times. Means a lot to me, guys. So, until next time, keep checking in, and I'll keep crafting more challengers and more content.